Why Zimbabwe is begging white farmers to come back. What if the single worst economic decision in modern African history came down to one man, one policy, and about 5 years? There was no invasion, plague, or global financial crash rolling in from outside. Just a government that took one of the most productive agricultural economies on the continent, a country that fed its neighbors, exported food across Africa, and was literally called the breadbasket of the region, and ran it into the ground so completely that by 2008, the national currency had become a joke the entire world was laughing at. A $100 trillion banknote, printed by a real government, used at real shops, and still not enough to buy groceries. Prices were doubling every 24 hours. Not monthly, not weekly. Every single day you woke up slightly poorer than when you went to sleep, even if you hadn't spent a single cent. Life savings built over decades vanished in weeks. People lined up at ATMs not because they were withdrawing money, but because they were racing the clock before the number in their account lost half its value by afternoon. And the most infuriating part? None of it was inevitable. Zimbabwe didn't run out of resources. It didn't lose a war. It destroyed itself deliberately and systematically through one political decision that dismantled everything that had made the country work. Now, 25 years later, the same government is knocking on the door of the people it expelled and asking if they'd consider coming back. Whether that offer is genuine or just the most useful lie Zimbabwe has told in years is where this story gets really interesting. Before Zimbabwe was Zimbabwe, it was a country called Rhodesia, and Rhodesia was a powder keg. In 1965, the white minority government that ran the country made a move that shocked the international community. Rather than accept majority black rule and transition to independence the way the rest of Africa had, it declared independence from Britain unilaterally, on its own terms, keeping the same people in charge. Nobody recognized it. The United Nations slapped on sanctions, but Rhodesia, backed quietly by apartheid South Africa, held on for over a decade while a civil war burned around it. Armed liberation movements, funded from across the continent, fought to bring it down. 15 years, 30,000 dead, until a ceasefire in 1979 and elections the following year produced a winner. Robert Mugabe. He renamed the country Zimbabwe, dismantled the old colonial government, and was welcomed by the international community as a liberator. And in many ways, that framing was fair. The country he inherited was built on a foundation of racial injustice so stark, it was almost cartoonish in its inequality. A few thousand white farmers, roughly 2% of the population, owned more than half of Zimbabwe's most productive farmland. That same tiny community controlled an estimated 40% of the entire national economy. Millions of black Zimbabweans worked as laborers on land that had been taken from their ancestors during colonial rule and had no legal path to ownership. Land reform wasn't just popular, it was necessary. The injustice was real. What Mugabe did with it was not. For the first 2 decades, Mugabe actually tried to handle land reform properly. His government used public funds to buy farms from willing white sellers and redistribute them to black Zimbabwean families. It was slow. White-owned land shrank by about 20% over 7 years, but it was working without destroying anything. The farms stayed productive. The country kept feeding itself. Then Mugabe's political situation changed. By the late 1990s, a genuine opposition movement was forming. Economic frustration was mounting. His grip on power, which he had always treated as permanent, was starting to look fragile for the first time. He needed something to redirect public anger, something dramatic enough to remind people which side he was on. He picked the farms. In 2000, he launched what he called fast-track land reform. And fast-track is the right phrase. It moved so quickly that the entire agricultural economy was dismantled before anyone fully understood what was happening. Armed militias stormed white-owned farms across the country. Farmers were given notices measured in hours rather than weeks. Those who registered faced violence. Some were killed, most left, taking their equipment, their knowledge, their commercial contacts, and their decades of farming expertise with them. The land they left behind was handed out, but not to struggling rural families, not to people who needed it and knew how to use it. It went to Mugabe's political allies, ministers, generals, party officials, people who had never managed a commercial farm and had no intention of starting. The results arrived almost immediately. Zimbabwe went from exporting food to importing it in under 5 years. By the mid-2000s, roughly a third of the population needed food assistance just to survive through a year. The most productive agricultural economy in the region had been reduced to dependence on international food aid. And it was only going to get worse. Western nations imposed sanctions. Foreign investment collapsed. Zimbabwe found itself economically isolated at exactly the moment its domestic food production had fallen apart. A combination that would have tested even the most competent government. Mugabe was not a competent government. He blocked foreign aid, accusing international organizations of funding his opponents. When government debt spiraled, he printed money to cover it. When inflation followed, he printed more. His advisors pleaded with him to stop. He kept going. By 2008, Zimbabwe's inflation rate had reached 79.6 billion%, a number so large it requires a moment just to parse. Prices were doubling every 24 hours. Savings were vaporizing in real time. The economy had stopped functioning in any recognizable sense. Zimbabwe eventually did the only thing left to do. It abandoned its own currency entirely and started using the US dollar. The $100 trillion note became a souvenir. Mugabe stayed in power until 2017. Then his own military removed him, one of the more undignified endings for a leader who had once been celebrated around the world. The man who replaced him looked at what remained of Zimbabwe's economy and faced a choice that had no comfortable option. Emmerson Mnangagwa understood the arithmetic immediately. Zimbabwe was carrying $21 billion in debt to international creditors. Western sanctions were still firmly in place, blocking access to capital markets. Foreign investment remained non-existent. Food security was still precarious, and the agricultural expertise, infrastructure, and commercial networks needed to fix any of that had walked out the door 2 decades earlier, driven off at gunpoint by his predecessor. He started quietly encouraging white farmers to return. Joint ventures were arranged. Some farmers came back, partnering with the indigenous landowners who now held their old properties. Around 900 white-run commercial operators eventually restarted. Output improved. Progress was visible, if modest. But the vast majority of white farmers weren't moving, and they said the same thing every time anyone asked. They had trusted a Zimbabwean government once. It had taken everything they owned. What exactly was different now? Mnangagwa's answer came in October 2024. A formal compensation package approving over 440 claims totaling more than $3.5 billion, with additional payments to foreign nationals pushing the total even higher. On paper, this was the most significant step toward reconciliation the country had ever taken. In practice, the terms gutted the gesture before it even landed. Just 1% of the compensation would be paid in cash. The rest came in Zimbabwean treasury bonds, debt instruments issued by a government with no functioning currency, no deep capital markets, and a track record of economic management that would give any investor pause. Bonds from Zimbabwe are not investments. They are promises from a government that has broken every previous promise it made to this exact group of people. Then there's the land. The compensation doesn't cover it. Only the buildings, equipment, and irrigation systems left behind. The farms themselves remain under indigenous ownership, and a bill passed at almost the same time as the compensation announcement formally transferred full legal title to indigenous Zimbabweans currently holding that land, while explicitly barring white Zimbabweans from purchasing it back. The invitation reads, "Come back to Zimbabwe, farm land you cannot own, accept payment in bonds you cannot spend, and trust that this time will be different." But the deal collapses under the weight of one practical detail. In Zimbabwe, the only way to secure a bank loan is to put land up as collateral. A lease, which can be revoked at any point, doesn't qualify. No ownership means no collateral. No collateral means no financing. No financing means no equipment. No irrigation upgrades, no scaling up. A commercial farm that cannot access capital cannot produce at the level Zimbabwe needs. The structure of the deal guarantees the farmers who return will never be productive enough to change anything. Which makes you wonder what the deal is actually for. Because Mnangagwa is running two negotiations simultaneously, both of which depend, in part, on how Zimbabwe appears to be treating its white farming community. One is with the African Development Bank over restructuring that $21 billion debt. The other is with Western institutions over lifting the sanctions that have been suffocating the economy for 2 decades. In both conversations, the white farmer question is on the table. And what the current arrangement gives Mnangagwa is something very specific: the appearance of reconciliation without the political cost of actually delivering it. He can point to compensation packages, to joint ventures, to formal invitations. He can say, "Look, we're trying to make this right." Whether that is genuinely true or whether it is a carefully constructed diplomatic performance designed to unlock debt relief and sanctions while never actually returning meaningful land rights is the question nobody in Harare is answering directly. What is clear is that the deal doesn't work for the farmers being asked to accept it. What is also clear is that it works very well for the government's negotiations with external creditors. Sometimes a policy that looks like a solution to one problem is actually a solution to a completely different problem. And the people being used to solve it don't always get to know that's what's happening. Zimbabwe still has the soil. It still has the climate. It still has everything it needs to be what it once was. What it doesn't have yet is a deal honest enough to rebuild the trust that one man spent a decade destroying. And until it does, the breadbasket stays empty. If this changes how you think about African politics, make sure to subscribe to our channel. It helps more people find this video. And if you thought this was interesting, wait until you see this next.